Dobar dan i dobrodošli u još jednu epizodu Zalet Podkasta. Zalet je podcast o dizajnu digitalnih proizvoda. Kao i uvek, sa vama su danas Arsenije Ćatić, Dragan Babić. And because of our special guest that we have today, we are going to record this episode in English for the first time. So bear with us. Let's go.
Our guest today is Andy Chung. Yay! And now roll our intro. Andy, welcome to the show, man.
Told you it was weird.
It's always weird. It's always cringe.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. How you been today?
Good. Just, enjoying my first weekend ever in Belgrade.
The heat.
Enjoying the heat, sweating it out, walking around, taking a lot of showers.
Yeah. Before we kick off this conversation, I would really like to thank you for taking the time of your really tight schedule here in Belgrade and to come here to speak with us. And it was really, I guess, spontaneous to actually meet and to so yeah, thank you very much for doing this with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, let us introduce you. So as I have it in our notes, you are a designer, an engineer.
Kind of.
Okay, you're really humble, but okay. I put it here, someone who builds his own stuff, his own ideas, and most recently a startup co-founder. Is that all true?
Yeah, that's mostly correct.
Okay, so I would like to start so that you can just, tell us a bit more about yourself and how did you come to this point in your career? So just focus through your path as a designer. Yeah.
So if I were to, I guess, summarize my background a little more simply, I would say I'm a product designer. But I think that means a lot of different things. And so like you mentioned, means a little bit of engineering, a little bit of entrepreneurship now. But I, at the end of the day, call myself a product designer. My background, where do I begin? I'm actually Canadian. So I'm from Vancouver, BC. And that's where I studied design in school. I studied communication design, so mostly print design, that sort of thing. And I kind of got my intro into digital design, working on just friends' websites, helping them with portfolios and that kind of thing, and just making sure that those were really great. And that eventually translated into going from more, like traditional just display brochure websites to more product-oriented design. So I got a job out of school working at Mozilla at a small remote office that they had in Vancouver. And that led me to working at Facebook, and that's kind of where I learned what product design really was.
So Mozilla was like 2009 probably?
Yeah, 2009. I worked there 2009 to 2011, and then got kind of recruited kind of to Facebook around then, and then worked there for the next 4 years.
Also from Vancouver?
No, I ended up moving down to California for that job, and so I've been based in California ever since then.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did you go? Did you move to they're in Palo Alto, right?
Yeah. So I originally moved. It's a little bit of a long story. Where when I initially started, I didn't start full time right away. I started as a contractor, and so the first 3 months I spent in an Airbnb in Palo Alto, just near the office. But when I joined full time, I moved to San Francisco, and now I'm based in Berkeley, which is just over the bridge.
I thought you moved from Vancouver to California to stay remote, just moved closer, but still remote. So yeah, nice.
So do we wanna speak about Facebook now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So this is
Archie has a fascination with early Facebook design.
So early Facebook is one of my. So I said that if I ever write a book or something like this, it's going to be about like this first theme, because to me, this was like revelation, because before that I didn't know what's product design. Like, so how to explain this? So you need to understand that we at least I consider myself for outsiders, and everything that was happening in the Silicon Valley was something really magical, right? So whenever there's some new app or something like this, we would, follow it everywhere we could. So when I discovered like this small, I wasn't even sure, it's not a design group or Facebook page, it's maybe an engineering or something. It still exists. I just checked it out like 2 months ago because I was looking for some video. So it was my fascination back then to actually see all this group of people who I still think they are all amazing. So yeah, I would like.
Well, I kind of always also thought that the practice of product design as we know it today kind of, at least in part, originated with that group.
Yeah, like I'm hesitant to be like, yes, like someone there invented that terminology, but I think it was sort of the first time I started hearing the term product designer applied outside of industrial design and to digital things.
To software, yeah.
Same.
So I think it came, out of around that era at Facebook.
Yeah.
But I don't know who exactly it was that coined the term.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but it's kind of to me, it's a big deal to kind of be able to trace it back, at least in part, to a group of people that did things in a certain way that warranted them calling it a certain name,
right?
To giving it a name. Do you remember how you executed design at that time? Was it much different than it is done today? Probably is, because it was a smaller team and the dynamics were different.
Do you mean like me personally, or how the team was executing stuff?
Probably, or
I mean, it was interesting. It was like, I felt like when I joined the team, I came from a background where like I wouldn't have called myself a product designer. I was still like I said, I graduated school in 2009, and I had just done like 4 years of communication design. And so when I graduated, I didn't even really have a good idea of what kind of company I wanted to work for. It was like a recession, and I was like, I'll do anything basically. So, I did a small internship at like an ad agency. And then I kind of fell into doing more digital product design at Mozilla, but I didn't really know what you would call it. And so a lot of the type of work there was still pretty influenced by, like graphic design and that kind of thing. And it was this really blurry line. And then when I interviewed at Facebook, I actually got recruited for a communication design role there on that team. And it just so happened that at that time, the communication design team and the product design team were pretty small. And so when they did portfolio presentations, both teams would just go to, like, the product design team would show up and watch the communication design interviews, and maybe even vice versa, I'm not sure. And so when I gave my presentation, it was sort of this weird mix of work that could have fallen on either side of that spectrum. And basically the product design team said, hey, we want to interview this guy as well. And I ended up doing like 2 interview loops that day. So I did a communication design interview loop, product design interview loop, and ended up not getting the communication design role, but eventually the product design role did end up working out. In terms of the process, I feel like it's not overly different than it is today. Maybe one thing I would say is that, there was maybe at that time at Facebook, and it changed a lot during my time there, but at the beginning of it, there was a lot of sort of experimentation and just like focus on what, at least from the design team, like what the most interesting or best consumer experiences could be. And I think Facebook's reputation has changed a lot throughout the years, but they really started putting more and more and more of an emphasis on metrics and data and making decisions that way. So I would say that it went from the earliest team, which was, I think, a lot of designers that were some of the most like creative and experimental designers in terms of interactions and that kind of thing. And it's sort of, I think a lot of early work has sort of like set the tone for digital design for the next decade or so. But also it's sort of maybe lost a little bit of that along the way, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. How much would you say that innovation, as you described it just now, you said that the designers were, I'm going to use the word allowed enough freedom to experiment and innovate. How much of that innovation came from the design team, and how much of it, like the stuff that actually got on the public release of the software, how much of it came from the top, like top down?
Yeah, I mean, this is like...
Because at that time, Facebook was kind of doing a new thing.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It was...
Social in a lot of networks ways, were a new phenomenon.
Yeah. So a lot of what would work and what wouldn't work came out of experimentation and not really having a lot of precedence behind it. I would say that early on, like a lot of designers were definitely given a lot of freedom, like more so than maybe they should have been sometimes. But, the things that come to mind are like just the type of work that, like Mike Mattis or Brandon Walken were doing at that time, just around with like, it's like pure interaction design on stuff like Facebook Paper, or even the phone project, Facebook Home, like their little phone OS project. A lot of that stuff was really quite design driven in terms of like, just thinking like, hey, wouldn't this be interesting? Like, let's explore it. Let's see what happens. And so a lot of interesting paradigms definitely kind of popped out of that. That were not like PM driven or data driven at all. That's
really interesting to hear, because I honestly couldn't say how much of that kind of stuff is going on now in bigger companies. I think that product design has been so commoditized and it's process driven these days, with, as you said, metrics and just initiatives coming from the business side or whatever, and also I just think that I have a feeling that there's a lot more pressure on designers these days. Runways are shorter, money's, there's not, it's more of a touchy subject rather than it was back then, when it was kind of more like a Wild West thing.
Yeah, I think it was just a Wild West, and a lot of the interaction patterns and stuff for like mobile phones, for instance, just weren't very well defined and established. And so it was a period of experimentation where it was like how should this work? And there was this like a million different ways to try something, and no one really knew. I think at this point, those patterns have been established, and so people can really focus more on the business use case. And there's really only like, you maybe have like three good options for navigation or something, and there's not really much point.
It's not something that you need to think through that hard,
unless you're solving like a really unique problem and you have a solution that really warrants it. Then it's kind of more rare to try or to be able to justify using like a one-off solution or something that no consumer has seen before or something.
How did the research and discovery look like back then? Was it just trial and error, or did you go like deep into theory or user testing? And
I feel like I think a lot of it was sort of like trying to solve things from first principles, and trying to reduce like cognitive load and that kind of thing. And so it really depends on like what project we're talking about, but like I remember there are certain things that I didn't work on that I just remember being there for the conversations. So like I remember there's like just like talking about like the photo viewer in the mobile app, right? And so up until that point, it was like you would tap on a photo, it would open, and then there'd be like a close button in there. And so users would have to like reach their finger to the top left corner of the screen and tap it in order to dismiss the photo, go back to where they were. But I remember like Brandon created this prototype in Quartz Composer, which is what they were using for interaction design a lot back then. It was like, hey, what if you could just like swipe the photo away and like dismiss it, right? And one benefit of that is that maybe you don't need to have a close button. It's just easier to just invoke
once the users learn.
Once the users learn, it's like way easier to invoke than having to tap a close button. And maybe you don't even need a close button. But yeah, even that was like
eventually you move it away.
Yeah,
altogether.
and it's just funny because I remember it caused it was controversial to even try it. There were PMs that were like, no one's going to understand how this works. Like, it's a big deal. But now, looking back at that conversation, it was like so silly. Like every single app has swipe to dismiss. It's like embedded in the OS so
it's
deeply.
Like a design pattern.
Right, a design pattern. It's like
you rely on it.
Yeah, you look at Instagram, you can swipe anything away. And so it's just like, right now, I don't think you'd have to convince anyone that it's like a better user experience. It's just one of those conversations that happened early on that was just, funny to think back on.
That battle was won back then for everybody. Probably.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what was the process like of building stuff back then? Was it like a mandatory to have all designers to code, to deliver code, to push to production even? Or was it something a bit different?
I think that was sort of like having designers be able to code and push production and prototype was something that was maybe a little bit before my generation. So, Facebook started in like 2004. I joined 6-7 years later, 2011. And by that time,
I think they opened up to the world like outside of educational schools.
Yeah.
In like 2006.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. Right? And so the earliest designers definitely were in that world. By the time I joined, I think it was actually, so a friend of mine, Drew Hamlin, he started off as an intern, I think in 2007, and then came back and joined. And actually, he was the one that started advocating for, because he did a communication design program as well, and he went to school with a bunch of people who were non-technical. And I think he was the one who sort of advocated for, hey, these are really great designers. They don't have engineering backgrounds, but they can still add value. And so I think when a lot of those UW guys joined in like 2009, 2010, that's sort of when they I think the shift kind of happened a little bit where, it wasn't so much so that you needed to know how to program, but it was this, hey, you just need to know how to communicate your ideas effectively. And so it wasn't that people were just making static mocks, but they were just building their prototypes in something like Quartz Composer or something that was more of a
Was that something that pushed somebody to, what's the name of the product that Facebook came up for prototyping?
Origami.
Yeah. So Quartz Composer was like this tool that Apple had created, or I think they acquired some company, and they had this tool called Quartz Composer. It was originally used for like broadcast graphics. So like if you were like watching a sports game or something and they wanted to do live graphics overlaid, this is what that program was used for. At the time, it was also kind of used for like visual effects and like VJing. Yeah, like if you were creating visuals for shows or whatever.
Visualizations
used by like the creative coding community, that kind of thing. And then I think Mike Mattis brought it from Apple into the Facebook ecosystem, and then Brandon Walken and Drew also started hacking on it and creating like a suite of, I guess, patches that were kind of like used for prototyping mobile applications. And so that was one of the tools that, was used early on there.
It was. I remember seeing it for the first time. I never used it, to be honest, but I remember seeing the products that were made with it that were really impressive, like really, really authentic experiences could be made.
I used it a couple of times, but later on, actually Apple moved or replicated a lot of interactions even inside of the keynote. So you could technically prototype something really silly inside of the Keynote, which I also tried, and it worked.
Yeah.
And back then, like they stopped just updating the Quartz Composer. I guess it was buggy. I mean, it was unpredictable, right? Unstable. So.
Yeah, which is why eventually Facebook spun up a team that worked on Origami now. So that's like their current, which is crazy to me that it still has a team supporting it. But yeah, so Facebook Origami is like the current incarnation of that work.
So what's the most notable project that you worked on in Facebook?
Yeah, it was probably the last project I worked on there, which is like reactions.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so when they extended the like button to have sort of like more emotions tied to it, everything. Yeah.
Was it was it the first of its kind interaction on the web? I mean, in digital design.
No, I mean if you remember Path.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Path actually had that before Facebook.
It was a lot of things came out of Path.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of cool stuff.
They had like a slightly different interaction.
How does that project or initiative come to be? And you know, how does like somebody, you know, gets up to your desk and is like, "Hey Andy, we need to boost something, or we need, you know, more ways for users to express themselves or whatever."
Yeah, I think it was like the way that the project really originated was a little bit, I'm trying to remember, but I wasn't the first person to work on it. And it wasn't just me or anything. I think the original like exploration came from Mike Mattis. And I'm not sure how he started working on it. And there might have been some really high level initiative that was just like, I want to say like the original reason why was because you just really wanted like a dislike button. And it's kind of like a negative thing to just, you know, throw a thumbs down on every story. Is kind of, I don't think that would be very positive for the ecosystem. And so there's probably just some, and this might not be true, but I think this is what happened. There's just some executive thing being like, hey, what if we explored more ways to leave lightweight feedback on stories? And so Mike did the original exploration. He had a really crazy prototype where it used like the front-facing camera to capture your face, and kind of like a Memoji. It was like a really early version of Memoji. Like at that time, there was no one. I don't know if you knew they were working on that at Apple or something, but like it was basically that, but as a way of leaving like any kind of expression on.
So you basically record yourself.
Yeah, but it was like it wasn't like a photo. It was like
an avatar.
Yeah, it's an avatar.
Animated or
exactly. Yeah. And at some point, the project got passed on to me, and I worked on it with a bunch of other designers. I worked on it with Brandon Walken, this other guy Brian Frick, another designer, Seth Eckert. So Seth was a contractor. He did like the animations and some refinements on the illustrations. Brian was an icon. He did mostly the visual design and iconography. And so it was a bit of a slog of a project, but nice. It was one of the few projects that like shipped and like is still kind of, I think, I don't really have Facebook right now, but it functions the same as when we put it out there.
Yeah. And also, it seems like every other app has it. I mean, they have adopted the practice of reactions to things. Pretty meaningful work, I would say. I mean, pioneering that kind of thing. Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know that you worked on this. So, are there any other insights that you could share from your time at Facebook? Something that you can say it publicly? I mean, some nuggets behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of the stuff, I don't know if these are nuggets, but like I will say that like maybe in potential interesting things to hear about like what blockers there were on projects like that. So like reactions was like the first version of something, and the main challenge of the project was not really the interaction design or how the model worked or anything. It was just like being able to ship this big of a change to Facebook without dropping any of the current engagement. And so it was basically like, okay, we built this thing, it's cool. We're gonna put out a test to a certain, I think it was to Ireland or something. And we just had to measure like, hey, does this change like negatively impact the number of likes? And you know, there's a good chance that it does, because it does add a lot of complexity to the like button. There's something beautiful about having a single button and having no options, just on or off. And we're giving you a bunch more options now. And so sure enough, when we initially launched the test, engagement went down by a certain percent, nothing major. And we kind of factored this into the design of it, right? Like it's not, we knew that you couldn't, like the way that Path worked was you hit a reaction button and it gave you like the 5 options or 6 options or whatever it is, and you had to tap again. And I kind of knew that like, okay, we make people tap twice to like something, it's gonna like just kill engagement. So we put it behind a long press to try and like make the default one tap to like still the default experience. But even so, for whatever reason, engagement was down a little bit. And so we were kind of in this stalemate where we're like, okay, well, how do we like get engagement back up to at least the same threshold as before? And so what we ended up having to do was iterate on not necessarily the interaction for how you leave a reaction, but we iterated on the display of how reactions displayed on the story itself. And so the thing that got our metrics back up, on mobile, it used to just say like 3 likes if there was 3 likes on a post. And what we did, which was a little bit cheating because it had nothing to really do with reactions, is we started putting social context in there. So instead of saying 3 likes, it would say like, you know, Dragan and 2 others reacted or something. And that bit of social context is what pushed the overall metrics in that build like above into positive metrics range. And that's like what we were able, that's when we got the green light to ship it.
That's so cool that's a brilliant display of how resourceful you have to be and how you have to go beyond the scope of the project, which was, you know, create a mechanism to add various reactions in order to ship it eventually and make it a part of the product. How you have to think outside of that scope of that very tight scope of that project. That's very cool.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, we were trying like all sorts of permutations to try to get it to work. And that's the one that worked. And I think the PM on our team was like, okay, this is kind of cheating because this has nothing, this would boost engagement regardless of reactions. And I was like, I don't care. Like don't mention that. Let's just ship it.
Yeah. And also very interesting note that the actual UI had such a major effect on the product, because we're usually, I mean, I know that I'm the first one to say that UI is like the least important thing that, you know, as a product designer you want to focus on. It's mostly a solved issue for me. It's sort of it's a given. But sometimes UI actually matters, especially in such deeply impactful things like that project. So
yeah, exactly.
Pretty cool.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about, like, you know, a couple of years later, we are taking these patterns, interaction patterns, for granted. I mean, you know, if I would about to make another, let's say, social app or something like this, I would just take this pattern because this is how it works. You know, it is what it is. So, yeah, I mean, we you know, you needed to think about and to work around in order to push this to production, and now we are just kind of taking it for granted, which is crazy. Cool. We kind of segued to another topic that we would like to speak with you, which is consumer products, and we kind of scratched the surface here, because the context is that in this part of the world, maybe I'm wrong, but mostly, like most of the designers here are actually working on a business software. There's not a lot of consumer, let's say not just social, but just consumer in any sense. Did you ever work on any business software?
Yeah, I guess depends what you mean by business software. So, like after I left Facebook, I ended up working at a company called Quip, which was kind of like a document editor, similar to collaborative software, similar to Google Docs. And so in a certain sense, it was business software. It's like productivity.
I'd say so.
Yeah. But in another sense, it was started by Brett, whose background was in social. He came from Facebook. He was the CTO at Facebook. And so I want to say like a lot of the stuff in there, since it was like in the early days of like multiplayer document editing, that kind of thing, were kind of like taken and borrowed from consumer a little bit, in the way just the whole suite of things work there.
I think we're actually in an era where this is happening more and more. I think that creators of business software are in a position to no longer have to ship bare bones software. Mm-hmm. You know, they can actually add value and make a difference with the user experience. Let's put it in really broad terms, like UX. Let's call it UX. Just a more enjoyable experience. You know, we see that with linear. We see that now, that, as you say, with Quip. It was called Quip. I actually use it. I just forgot about it. But
is it still alive?
I don't know.
Sort of.
Okay.
It got like acquired by Salesforce.
Okay.
And
that explains.
Good as it.
Yeah. And they have some contracts where it's still alive, but most of the team, as far as I know, got kind of consumed by the Slack team when Slack got acquired by Salesforce. So I think there's some people keeping it alive, but just for those contracts.
Like a skeleton crew.
Yeah, kind of thing.
Making it work. Yeah. Consumer software, just going back to that topic that Archie just opened up, I think doing, I don't even want to say consumer software, just consumer-facing apps are kind of a difficult thing and a different beast in Europe because the market is so segmented. You have all this different languages, culturally different countries, which are all in all much smaller than the US or even US and Canada, which is basically, Canada is still mostly English speaking, right?
Yeah.
Or is it 50-50 between French and...
I would, don't quote me on this, but I would say it's not 50-50 at all. It's basically just, Quebec is French, but that's like one province.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm actually not expecting a lot of innovation to come from Europe in this sector.
But there was recently, like last summer, everyone went crazy about this app from France.
Yeah, France has all the consumer apps these days.
What was the name?
Well, there's Be Real.
The other one where everything
Ammo?
is where everything is a canvas.
Yeah.
What's the name?
Ammo? Well, I don't know if that was the name. I think that's the name of the company, but I forget what the name of the app is. But yeah, I think those are like I want to say Zenly team.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, who are from Snapchat. Yeah. Who've been putting stuff out. But yeah, back to your question. I don't know. I feel like, I worked on some non-consumer thing, and I feel like every business has like a kind of non-consumery side to it as well, right? So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can help us with this. So, is there any like explicit line between designing for consumer versus designing for business? Because to me, like it would take a lot of time and mental model shifting for me to go into designing for consumer, because most of my time is spent in designing for business. Do you have any take on this?
I think it's, at the end of the day, you're just problem solving. And so just having your ability to understand sort of like who you're designing for and what problems you're solving, I think is just the name of the game, really. And so it's your ability to sort of put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand that. I think that people probably have, just based on their own experiences, certain expertises that lets them be better at solving certain problems than others. Like, I know that, so when I worked at Quip and we got acquired by Salesforce, all of a sudden it was like, hey, we're trying to solve a lot of Salesforce problems. And I was like, well, I'm not a salesperson. I don't really know the biggest problems to solve and the best ways to solve the Salesforce issues. And so it was sort of like, it was a lot of like trying to understand the context and just talking to people and that kind of thing. Whereas working at like Facebook on something like Reactions, I was like, oh, I use this product all the time. And I have a pretty good like understanding of how I would use it and my peers would use it. And it's like, it's kind of just easier to sometimes to design something that you're going to want and use it for yourself. And so maybe that's the biggest shift in context.
Yeah, maybe you can make better assumptions when you're the user.
Totally, yeah.
As well. I would actually say that consumer-facing products maybe have different challenges than business-facing software in different parts of their lifetime, you know? Like, at first, you have to optimize for virality or just probably even a greater focus on overall user experience, just because it's so competitive.
Sure.
Especially when you're a new app and you're trying to get traction. Whereas in business-facing software, if your software is, I mean, that could probably mean the same thing. Because I wanted to say, like, if it's solving a very specific problem to the business, the users are going to learn how to use it, no matter how shitty the app is. You know, they're going to use it, or because somebody said, like, we're using this now.
Yeah, I think that's why there was such a big like boom around SaaS for a bit, where it was like, hey, if you just isolate this market and solve this very specific problem, then you'll automatically be the market default and win.
Yeah.
But I do think that is maybe that era is coming to somewhat of a close because there's just so many SaaS products.
Over.
Yeah.
Thank God. I was the guy that like, I was so into that for quite a few years. I loved SaaS, everything. And I would, you know, try out every single app that had at least one interesting thing working on it, you know, and just got really tired of it. It seems like really, really like a waste of time now. I think I also kind of accepted that the big guys won, like the Googles won, the Salesforce maybe with, I mean, they can just acquire whatever they're missing, you know.
Yeah.
The ecosystems won, you know. That's where it's going. It's everything is going to get integrated, and you're going to have the same functionality no matter which ecosystem you choose. It's all going to be great, and you're not going to miss out on anything. So what's the point of making your indie invoicing software? You know, that's kind of a, you know, now I view it as like a bad business move, but back then it was like why not, you know?
But is it really that though? Because like I'm seeing revival in a sense that some people are building like these really single purpose tools for a really specific people, either someone who is their peers, for example, indie hackers or indie builders or something like this, or like even, you know, like really small companies. I agree totally with what you said, with everything, but I'm just thinking, is this era really done, or we're just seeing, you know, changing form?
Well, I think the hype is over with. I mean, you know, we're still going to get either single purpose or narrow purpose software as a service things. it's just not going to be all about it.
For example, you know, like people are bashing Dropbox, for example, because it just grew in bunch of different set of tools, set of applications, I don't even know. And people just want to share the file really, you know, in a really simple manner. So, yeah, that's one of the examples. Like, why can we have only, you know, just drop file in a folder and we are done with it?
Because that's not enough to drive the projected profits, revenues, numbers.
Yeah, I think this is Dropbox is kind of an interesting case in the sense that they had this really unique value proposition to begin with, but then, like you said, like Apple and Google and all the big players kind of just realized they could provide storage too, and end up being this race to the bottom for what the lowest cost you can provide for hosting files is. And it's just interesting seeing that happen with different industries. And it, you know, that was like back then, it was kind of interesting to see it maybe potentially starting to play out now with like the AI stuff, right? Where you have this innovator and leader OpenAI in the space doing a lot of crazy, awesome things. But it's just a matter of time before, hey, are the big players going to be able to catch up and provide the service at a fraction of the cost to developers? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, I also still think that there's room for indie stuff everywhere. I'm really hyped for that. I'm always for indie anything, especially in the SaaS space. And I also think that the future is probably going to look like for those products. They're going to come from probably, and at least that's my kind of opinion or hunch. They're going to come from either small, super small teams or individuals, which is kind of what I wanted to talk to you about and get your perspective on. We all know that there are people who are able to, you know, get a product to market by themselves, essentially, either with somebody with some help from somebody else or completely individually, which is just a crazy thing to imagine for me, at least. I can't say that I'm technical. I understand how software and the web works. You know, I was in a position to set up a server. I can do front end. I can find my way around, you know, templates and Rails and whatever, you know, but I was never at the level where I can actually create something that works. So I would just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, is that something that you see that you think we're going to see more of in the future, or is that like just something that's reserved for the select few who have actually said like, yeah, I need to learn how to code? Or
right. Yeah, no, I hope it's something that we keep seeing more of. I feel like more than ever now, like the barrier to entry on this kind of thing is like lower and lower and lower every day. Especially now with like coding assistants and that kind of thing. I'm seeing more and more designers just being able to build their ideas with a little bit of help from ChatGPT or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is
new
like
tools.
Yeah, new tools. It's like super cool, and like just being able to deploy a web app is easier than ever. So yeah, I mean, I hope that's the future that we have, where it's like you have sort of more options for tools that are tailored to you and individuals, and you don't have to be a massive venture funded endeavor in order to provide value to people, and that more people can create a good living for themselves, creating software that's meaningful to them and to other people. Like, that's what I hope for our business and what I hope to see more of. You know what I mean?
I mean, the main reason we're discussing this topic is obviously because you are running your own. Do we call it a SaaS or? No, it's just
how do we call it?
How do we call Read.cv?
Read.cv, yeah, I don't know. I guess there's some SaaS components of it, but the way that I think of it is like It started off as really humble beginnings. It's just a way of putting your resume online. And it has sort of grown and evolved since then to be a full-blown design community, where you'd go to sort of, get design inspiration, find new opportunities, find new collaborators, socialize with people. And we have a new feature now called Sites, where you can actually publish a website using the thing. So yeah, there's a lot of different components to it, and in a lot of ways I'd love to simplify it. But I guess, if you were, I think you just call it a platform.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
That's a good word.
Yeah,
a platform, because it's actually that. That's your full-time gig now?
Yeah. So I started that in 2020. So after I worked at Quip, COVID hit, and I got a little bit restless. We were working from home. I had shifted into more of a design management role, and so my days were just not the most fulfilling. It wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. So I ended up leaving my role there in summer 2020, and just spent some time, sort of hacking on projects. I was doing a little bit of contracting at the time, and kind of wanted to redo my portfolio or personal website kind of thing, to have sort of my work experience and my projects kind of all in one simple one-pager type of thing.
And then it got out of hand.
Yeah, and I was sort of this is kind of useful to me, so maybe I'll make it a platform to make it useful for other people and just see what happens. And so, I was just myself coding it, and then I put it out into the world. It was on Twitter or whatever, and it sort of just snowballed from there, which has been cool, yeah.
What was the most challenging aspect of that entire process, going from an initial idea to something that exists for people to use?
Yeah, I'd actually say that part before you launch is in a lot of ways the easiest part. No one's using it, you have no users, you can kind of do whatever you want.
There's no risk.
Yeah, there's no risk. If this fails, then that's not the end of the world. And so that 0 to 1 is kind of the most fun part. I think for us, I think the most challenging part is it's just myself and my co-founder. I'm a designer, he's an engineer. I feel just being consistent about marketing and telling your story over and over again is hard. Yeah, that to me I find is actually the most challenging part of it.
I think that's where that's why most projects fail, is because nobody wants to do marketing. No maker wants to do marketing.
It's we were talking about this earlier, where it's in 2010 you could just make a thing and then send your emails off to whatever press release things, and you get an article on TechCrunch, an article here. Now it's totally different, right? Where
completely
the
different
amount of
ballgame.
It's pay to play for any kind of press. I don't even really know what an article in Business Insider is even going to do for you, and so it's really just a whole new world of trying to. There's a lot of noise, and just trying to have your voice heard is a whole new challenge. But
the way that Read.cv, as you said, made it is through just honest social interaction with people who are interested. That's a completely new skill to have in the grand scheme of what we can call marketing.
Sure.
So you kind of have to have this knack for getting people's attention, and you have to hack your way into it, because people are so numb now to just being sold to.
Yeah, I think people are hyper aware of being
like sharks.
Yeah. People are super skeptical of any new thing.
Yeah.
I think what helped me and why it's kind of resonated with the audience that it has is because we're kind of a community product, but I myself am a designer, and so I'm not a outsider business guy who just
You're not a guy who's going to capitalize on something that others care about. Right. They recognize that you're true and that you are actually making this for because you care
right,
about
we're
it.
all designers and we're passionate about design, which is why we want to create this cool platform for design.
And that's probably a new venue to explore when making, let's call it indie software.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's like, if you understand your niche deeply, then you're probably a good candidate to be the one to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the expertise. You probably have some level of recognition within your field or your social group or online, whatever. And that's what works. We're often bashing marketing on this podcast. I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but kind of not.
Yeah.
But this is actually how I think marketing can be done. You can do honest marketing. You can use marketing techniques. Just don't be like.
It's a fine line. It's a really fine line to try and thread be on the edge of something that's completely cringe and over the top versus something that feels genuine and
be genuine. That's a good marketing strategy for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, we are living in a time where that is actually viable, to just be genuine and find your way to the market or through the market these days.
So to us, Read.cv feels like, organic community, in a sense that organically grew to this point. But was it your plan for it to be design community, or this is something that just happened?
The design community kind of just happened. I wouldn't say it was a plan, but I think I kind of knew that it would first be designers, just based on my own presence on the internet. It has always been, I hang out with designers and I post with design stuff, and so I kind of thought that might happen. But yeah, it has been cool. I mean, I would say that the audience is our hope is that it starts with design and then sort of seeps out into other sort of branches of knowledge work, basically. And so we've seen that happen. There's a lot of engineers and that kind of thing on the platform as well, but we'd love to keep it going to product and all the different aspects of knowledge work.
Nice. Yeah. What's some of the weirdest cases that you've seen
of people using it?
Yeah, people are using it.
Yeah. Someone set up a private investigator business on there. He was a private investigator in Hawaii.
Nice.
Which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, but it's not anything illegal, right? Everything is
I mean, I did not inquire about the services, but it seemed okay.
Nice. It seemed legit.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and you have a blogging option, right, as well, so you can have a blog.
Yeah. So we started with profiles, but we created pretty quickly after that this pages feature where you could sort of create case studies and more in-depth features for your work. And we've since been changing that a little bit to work a little bit more like a blog. And the sort of master plan there was to have basically a full suite of features that could turn your profile into a personal website. And so the sort of use case we're going for is designer personal websites, where you pretty often see a showcase of their work and then a little journal section, about page, that kind of thing. And so we want to be able to support all that stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
How much do you treat Read.cv as a business, and how much do you treat it as a business?
We completely treat it as a business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that the way that we think about it has changed a bit. The first few years that we worked on it, we were really focused on just user acquisition and growing the size of.
So that time's over.
Yeah,
that's not the primary concern anymore.
Actually, now I'm to be honest, I'm I care much less about the number of users we have. We have a healthy number of users. Great. It keeps growing by itself. That's great. But we really need to be we're focused on the monetization side. And so really we're more focused on which monetizable consumer products can we build that resonate with people, that still feel good and useful to people, that kind of thing.
So yeah. Which part do you think is harder to solve for, business or call it innovation, or maybe just creation?
Yeah.
For you personally.
Yeah. Well, I would say that like finding a super sticky, repeatable, monetizable product is it's definitely a bigger challenge than finding something that you can give away for free that's valuable. I mean, if all we cared about, if we had like a bottomless supply of venture capital or something, and all we cared about was growing the number of users, and then like, we could give everything away for free, and I think that would be like, people would be really happy about that. But
you're bootstrapped, right?
We raised a small seed round, but we haven't raised like a Series A or anything. But yeah, I don't know.
Eventually, it becomes a business, right? You have to.
Right. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
If it's successful,
that's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
we want to be able to keep doing this, right? We don't want to, like, our goal is not, you know, some acquisition or something. Like, we want to actually be able to keep providing value to people, and the way that we have to do that is we have to make money.
Yeah.
And so, I think right now our current challenge is definitely growing the revenue of the business. And I don't know if I would say, I don't know, they're kind of the same problem, I guess. You know what I mean? Where it's like, at the end of the day, if you're trying to monetize a consumer product, it's the same challenge as creating a valuable consumer product. It's just people are showing you as valuable with their subscription, their dollars or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there's probably like a bunch of like, if we have some stuff in the pipeline that I think is very business oriented. Like, we want to do like like self-serve sponsored posts, which I don't think there's anything super challenging about that necessarily in terms of like design challenges. It's just more a matter of putting it out there, and then the real challenge becomes like maybe sales. Yeah.
So this started as one of your side projects, and then do you remember the point in time where you were offered quote unquote seed money round, and you were like, okay, this means something else now? In a sense, if I take this money, I would eventually need to, grow it as a business.
Yeah. I mean, I launched the first iteration of it in, I think, November 2020. And then the discussions about turning it into a real business and taking some seed money happened like in December.
So quickly? No, next year.
No, December, like a month after.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then like I wrapped up the first raise in February, and that's when it was all kind of done. I don't know. I mean, I'm a first time founder, so it's interesting. I think I was just like, I don't know if I would really do anything that differently. I'd say the only thing I would do differently is start working on monetizable features earlier on. Just the way that like the nature of subscriptions work, it all compounds, and so it just seems like something that grows and grows, but isn't necessarily, at least we haven't seen like a hockey stick moment. It's just like, it seems more like, oh, this is just growing sustainably, and like in a few years we'll be in a really good place. I just wish we had started all that.
Would you call it a lifestyle business?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that even really means. I feel like people call stuff a lifestyle business. They just want to like have,
like,
some
low
stress, passive income.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would call it like low stress. Like if anything, I'm working harder than I ever really have.
Have your days changed compared to working for other companies now that you're working for your own, running your own?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that since it's only like, it's 2.5 of us working on this, it's like if any one of us is out on vacation or something, like everything kind of grinds to it.
Yeah.
You really feel it. Yeah. Also, like I'm kind of personally on the line for most things. And so in terms of like, hey, we get like support requests or bugs or whatever, it's like coming directly to me. And like a lot of times it's like, oh, if we don't act on this, then just nothing happens. And so, yeah, it's a lot of context switching. It's a lot of wearing different hats. And in terms of like, like roadmap, that's all on us too. Sometimes I do have fantasies about going back to being an IC and just being told.
So there is that kind of stress.
It's like, we have to, balance making big bets for where we want to be versus, fixing the current things and providing support. And so it's just like a never-ending balance of what do you prioritize. Yeah.
Did you ever romanticize running your own startup? Like, I'm gonna make something and it's gonna be like a thing.
Yeah. You always kind of think
it's awesome.
Yeah, with every feature you kind of have to trick yourself. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we just do X, Y, and Z. It'll be easy. And it's never
that. Yeah. Oh God.
At one point, you also launched the Posts.cv, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a bit more about the idea and how both of the products work together?
Yeah.
Or is it the same product right now, or like?
Yeah. So Posts is basically our little community app. It's like it's a Twitter clone. Basically what happened was for a long time, we've been running Read.cv and like it always kind of verged on being a social network, but we didn't really want it to be one. So we had social features like you could message people, you could follow people, but it wasn't like there's no real way to like share your ideas and just get feedback and just put them out there in the world. There's no like public conversation happening. And for me, I was like, oh, well, this use case is already like really well covered by Twitter. Like a lot of design communities on Twitter. Why would we try and compete with that? And like, what progress would we make? And you can look at this in retrospect and be like, this is either a good idea or a bad idea. But when Elon started taking over Twitter, there's a lot of just like, it was kind of chaotic where there's like this
like an exodus of designers.
Yeah, there was like this conversation happening like, oh, is there like another platform? And we're like, well, we have this, creative network and of professionals already on Read.cv. People like our brand. Like we might be in a good position to provide an alternative space for this. And for like the first time, there's like this small opening where maybe this made sense. And so Mehdi and I we kind of sat on this idea for like a couple of months before we said, okay, fuck it, let's just start building it and like see what happens. And so it is the same platform, it's your same identity. Your Read.cv profile is like linked onto your Post profile. But we specifically made the decision to like not put your posts on your Read.cv profile, which I don't know if that's like the forever decision, but at the time I was like, we want people to be able to, like the great thing about Twitter was that people were able to like kind of be themselves and be weirdos and post whatever they wanted. And that was separate from like their LinkedIn. And I was kind of like, well, we want people to be able to like engage naturally and not have this really buttoned up like LinkedIn persona.
Responsibility to be professional.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think made Twitter kind of like a great professional network. It was that you could kind of get to know someone on a personal level and professional level in the same space and kind of understand like, hey, would I actually like working with this person? Which I don't think you really get from LinkedIn because it's so like buttoned up.
Yeah.
So we just started building this platform. We built it mobile first, which was important for us, I think, just to have all the to get all the right feedback loops of Twitter right. I think we needed like push notifications and just like a really good native experience. So we put out a test flight. I want to say like 4 or 5 months afterwards, and it's kind of been rolling since then.
I don't I mean, you're probably right. I mean, but I don't recall it having it as a first version on the mobile. I was there like on web, just web, and maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, the first version was mobile. We had a test flight, and then we released the web version a few months later. I think last May. Yeah, last May. Not this May, but like a year before that. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else from the behind the scenes that you would like to share with us regarding because I mean most of the people that are listening to this or watching, they are probably on Read.cv. So
yeah, I think like, well, okay, Post is an interesting project in the sense that I thought there was two outcomes. One would be that it would like immediately grow to be a pretty big thing, or like no one would use it and it would just die. And that's sort of why we built it as a separate thing too, in the sense that like we didn't want to have to maintain like a dead social network. And so it was separate and not super embedded in the main Read.cv product. We could just kind of kill it. The weird thing to me is that it's sort of like just found its niche and has grown really like steadily and maintained like the same amount of engagement throughout. And so this wasn't really like an outcome I predicted. I thought it would kind of go either way, as social networks usually do, but maybe because it's a niche and the people that are there for a specific reason, that it's managed to like maintain itself, which has been
nice.
Cool.
Yeah, I've noticed like some people who actually either stopped sharing on Twitter and started using Posts more, or like just sharing different things, you know, which is also interesting, I guess, because as you said, like Twitter is for weirdos, but you know, Posts, it's not button up, but you know, like again, you're talking to a bunch of designers, you know that there are designers there, so it's I guess it's a bit.
That's my biggest gripe with Twitter. It's so many things, like. I personally am.
We always need to touch upon Twitter a little bit in our
struggling
podcast.
with. Like I get my cycling news from Twitter. I get my design news from Twitter. I get my just news from friends on Twitter, and it's kind of like if you really want to increase your engagement on Twitter, you have to be a niche, you know, guy.
Right.
You have to be a design guy, a this guy, a that guy. But I guess that's also the beauty of it, is that if you just want to read, you know, consume content, you can get almost anything that you want from that, you know. But as far as creating a following, I think you have to stick to one thing.
Yeah.
And be very, very careful with those side paths, like, you know, do just enough of them to be authentic and personal, but not go crazy, you know.
Yeah, one thing I have noticed about Posts, which is really cool, is that like, well, we created like 3 feeds to begin with. One was like highlights, which is just like our team like puts the most interesting stuff there. We have a following feed, which just works like the classic Twitter following model, where people you follow show up there. And then there's like an everyone feed, where it's just like a raw, unfiltered feed of just everything that happens here. And we almost didn't like ship the everyone feed, because we thought like, oh, this is going to be way too conducive to spam or abuse or whatever. But it's surprisingly held up, and it's been like cool to see that people that have like no followings can just immediately hop in and get exposure, engage with people. And if you're just like chill and posting stuff that like resonates with people, or like contributing to a conversation in a good way, then you don't even really need to build a following, so to speak. And that was actually a design decision we made too, which was we don't expose like number of followers on your profile. So everyone's sort of like at the base level, the same equal playing field. There's no like, I don't know, like posts.
You don't want that to become a race within.
Exactly. Like, yeah, it was always kind of like
a motivator.
Like the rate, like your ratio on Twitter of following the followers is like such a thing that
But
people care
does
about.
the everything feed have an algorithm behind it, or it's just
No, it's
the
like
latest
literally
stuff?
just like, here is everything.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I wanted to ask another question regarding that, but I just slipped my mind. Doesn't matter.
Okay, can we wrap it up slowly? So, now you have a chance because of our great audience and everything to promote anything that you would like. So anything that comes to your mind, you can just share with everyone.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, try out Read.cv if you haven't already. We have a new product called Sites, which lets you turn your Read.cv profile into a personal website. So your design portfolio or whatever you want, that kind of thing.
Which is pretty cool. I tinkered with it.
Oh, cool.
And it feels like a like a very nice balance of customizability. Is that a word?
Yeah.
And ease of use for a non-technical person.
Yeah.
So if you know HTML, you're probably gonna be able to customize your site.
Yeah, we took some inspiration from like earlier days of like Tumblr, where you could just sort of like pick a theme and go with it immediately, or if you really wanted to get in the nitty gritty and customize it, you can tweak it really however you want.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Super cool.
Nice. Andy, do you have any questions for us?
No, I mean, thanks for having me. It's super fun.
Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming, man.
Yeah, carving the time for us on your... I'm not sure if you're working here or just, on vacation, but in any case, thank you very much for such a, quick response and being eager to come and speak with us. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
This is going to be weird in English.
Do it in Serbian then.
Yeah, do it in Serbian.
No, I don't want to do it. I want to try it in English. I mean, if our audience, hate us so far, they're going to continue to hate us as well. Because of our accents. This is what I said to Andy and Dragan before. Like, no one likes to hear our accented English, but okay, it is what it is. So we're wrapping up another episode. So as we always say, love yourself, love each other, spread love, and be creative in a sense that you should be free to actually know how to build your ideas and to try to build your ideas, because you never know what like awesome things could be born out of it. I guess this is a leitmotif for this of this episode. So
go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Just go for it. Till the next time, we are signing off. We were Dragan, Andy, and Archie. So yeah, this was another episode of Zalet Podkast. Bye. Ciao.
That's it.
Nice.